And second, now we have Paul Brody. Paul, Paul Brody is like head of blockchain innovation at EY. And Paul couldn't join us in here, but what we did instead, we recorded an interview with him. So we're gonna play it for you, and in there you will see Javier, Astra, and Paul talking about innovation, blockchain, and what is happening in the DAO space. Um, Around 24 minutes fireside chat. So let it play.
Hello, Paul, and hello, DAO Day. Welcome to the DAO Day Estonia. So we are here today because there is so much to discuss about DAOs, especially beginning from US. And we can't Estonia here. And we're going to do this interview online because it's very kind of sad you couldn't come to Estonia to join us there, but maybe in the future you can. We hope for that. I have prepared some questions for you, and let's begin.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am really disappointed that I can't be in Estonia for this event. It's a really beautiful country, and Estonia has done an incredible job of kind of making a name for itself as a technology-friendly environment. And if I was not committed to a biking holiday in Portugal, I promise you I would be there.
Oh my God, that's Portugal is close. It's like almost here. But before we begin with deep questions into DAO space, could you please introduce yourself briefly? Because some people still might not know who you are. And could you share some information about your current work, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Paul Brody. I am the global blockchain leader at EY, which is the global professional services firm that often used to be known as Ernst & Young. I'm based in San Francisco, and I really oversee EY's efforts in the world of blockchain. And that boils down to about sort of four major things. The first are all the traditional services that a professional services firm like EY delivers. So financial statement audits, consulting, tax advice. Secondly, and this one is very important, we do a lot of fundamental core blockchain research in the Ethereum space. And in particular, we have a focus on something that we believe is immensely important to businesses and isn't really dealt with almost anywhere else or by anybody else, which is blockchain-based privacy. Privacy is immensely important. All businesses really want to keep their sensitive business data away from their competition. And what we want to do and what we are doing is we are building privacy technologies that allow companies to transact on top of public Ethereum with privacy. And if you want to know more about those, we have two technologies called Nightfall and Starlight, and you can find them at github.com/EY blockchain. So that's the second thing that we do. And then the third and fourth things we do are that we make actual business applications for end users in the blockchain space. One of them is an analytics tool to help you understand kind of what's going on in your blockchain business. And the other is a supply chain and business operations tool that allows you to create tokens and smart contracts. So that's what we do. It's an amazing business. It's grown an average of 100% a year for the last 7 years. And as I like to joke, if we can keep this pace up, then one day inside of the $45 billion organization in EY, I'll be considered the leader of a real business.
Congratulations already.
So then we are, as you know, we are more focused on DAOs within the blockchain space. So let's start with what is your take on DAOs? So what do DAOs mean to you?
So DAOs, I've been around in blockchain since very, very early on. And I actually built IBM's first blockchain. I built it with some guy named Vitalik Buterin on the alpha version of Ethereum. And so I've been around, I've seen all the evolutions of DAOs, and DAOs are a really brilliant idea. Now, the original idea of DAOs, this idea of like a fully automated, truly decentralized, autonomous system, we have moved a long way beyond that. There are quite a lot of those out there, and I think there's some really cool ideas. But more generally, DAOs have emerged as a tool for organizations to form and mature and engage people on the blockchain. And today, I think DAOs kind of fall into maybe three big categories. One category is this sort of something close to the original model, which are these like autonomous and decentralized, entities that have, on-chain governance models. The other is basically think of it as a digital cooperative. These are these kind of blockchain-based mechanisms for getting people together, but they still have very traditional sort of human-based governance models, right? It's really, a DAO is really just a kind of an on-chain business or co-op. And then the third is as something that looks really much more like almost like an on-chain corporation, like a for-profit company. So I see those as kind of three distinct flavors of DAOs that are emerging today.
Okay, so from there on, what are your thoughts on DAOs having legal entities or status, especially when it comes to number one and of course number two and three as well?
So I think it's really important, right? At the end of the day, one of my biggest priorities and one of the things that we talk a lot about to our clients is for blockchain to really thrive, it needs to do so inside of a regulatory framework, right? And some people have this hope that, hey, if we don't have too much regulatory compliance or we can never be regulated in a decentralized world, that's not realistic. If we want blockchain to have a big transformational impact, we have to operate inside of regulatory structures. We're seeing a tough year right now over on the financial services side where all these enforcement actions are taking place. Long run, these are good things. Same thing for the emerging kind of legal status for DAOs, especially the countries that are either creating legal status or people are starting to figure out which legal structure and organization fits. I think that's just hugely important because once they have a legal structure, it becomes easier to engage with other people, to open bank accounts, to have impact. And one of the things that's missing from a lot of conversation is that if we want blockchains to be really transformational in their impact for all of humanity, for business, for everything, we have to move beyond just doing stuff that happens on chain, right? If you think about it, we need to use the blockchain to make change in the real world. And to do that, DAOs have to have an entity structure that can extend into the real world.
Yes, absolutely. That's why we are here doing this conference as well. INO aim is to, like INO and this, we hope that also Estonian and Estonian law firms and all these people who are interested into Estonian innovation, our aim is to develop also legal preppers for DAOs in Estonia. So by leveraging Estonian digital system and also this identity system which we have on place already, which is working really amazingly. What are your ideas here? How to develop this kind of policy in a way that this digital society and everything can really work nicely there? That frameworks that can support DAOs and that the DAO lay frameworks can support Estonian country overall.
So in my mind, there's probably sort of two things that are really important. So one thing that's important is somehow you have to have a legal structure. And countries like Estonia or the United States are quite different in their approach. And Estonia is a good example, right? Estonia got to start with a bit of a clean sheet after the separation from the Soviet Union, independence. Estonia's got, it's a relatively small country with a quite sophisticated government. You got to have a clean sheet of paper. That means that Estonia has built a lot of sort of cool regulatory and technical infrastructure, and they didn't have to worry about, hey, that is something that competes with a thing that already exists, because in many ways you've got rid of a lot of the old stuff. And that's very beneficial. If you look at a lot of things that Estonia does better than the United States in these digital areas, it's because they got to start with a clean sheet of paper with a very engineering and technology savvy population and a very progressive government. And so the ability to have like a digital ID and legal frameworks that work for DAOs are very important. The US is a little bit different, right? We have a much more continuously operating legal structure. And so having things that fit into an existing legal structure is very important. One of the things that, and there's efforts, for example, in Texas and Wyoming to make sure that DAOs can actually create themselves a limited liability corporation. And then there's new research that's been done by the law firm of Orrick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe that shows that DAOs and co-ops actually have a very good kind of legal fit as well. So one part is the pure history of legal structures and making sure that they fit. The other part of this that I think doesn't get enough conversation is thinking about, what does our future look like? And I would say I fall into the camp of somebody who's fundamentally very optimistic about the future that's being brought to us by technology. I believe we're headed towards a world of where there's a great deal of abundance and where productivity continues to go up. In that world, capital is going to be inexpensive because we're going to have an incredible supply of intelligence and technology and manufacturing capability. But what's going to be really rare and valuable is human attention. And one of the things that I particularly love about the co-op model and this idea of kind of blockchain-based digital cooperatives is cooperatives are really good at getting and sustaining the emotional and direct activity and engagement of the members. And today, we think about capital markets. The purpose of capital markets is to accumulate capital and deploy it. But if capital is abundant and technology makes making stuff easy, then what's really valuable? The value in markets in the future may be more about accumulating engagement and deploying it for good things. And in that respect, I think DAOs and cooperatives, the ones that are truly anchored in a shared model among many participants, might be the organizational structure that we need for the kind of abundant future ecosystem that we're about to live in, I hope.
Okay, you actually answered a bit my next question. I wanted to ask how much blockchain and decentralization are needed for DAO. But a bit of maybe a decentralization, and you didn't answer. So what do you think about this?
So I think every industrial revolution needs a corresponding information technology revolution. And the last few industrial revolutions, all the prior industrial revolutions have been about accumulating capital and then deploying it into large centralized projects, right? Railroads, steel mills, utility systems, these are all very, very centralized projects. But I think in many ways, our future is one that requires us to deploy engagement into projects that are coordinated but decentralized. And take something as simple as the electric power grid. In the past, we had an electric power grid that was really made up of large generating facilities that deployed power to users. In the future, our electric grid may look much more like a decentralized system of solar panels and batteries, in which case we are on the cusp of an energy revolution and even a manufacturing revolution with 3D printing that's much more friendly to decentralization. And there the challenge is, how do you coordinate activity across many, many parties without creating a centralized digital monopolist that will exploit those parties or extract value? Because centralized digital monopolies ultimately, they start out being very helpful. They accumulate capital, they organize markets, they do an amazing job. But eventually they turn to extracting value from the ecosystem, and that's not helpful. And I think DAOs and decentralization, blockchains really enabling complex coordination in a decentralized structure is the kind of model that works with the creation of a decentralized industrial and commercial and energy infrastructure.
Oh, that's great. That's actually like very interesting topic since in Estonia, for instance, talking about the electric grid, there is a lot of support now in well, people building their own solar panels and having somehow independence from the normal grid. So actually, there is a lot of effort in having your own electric.
I've got solar panels and batteries. I've got solar panels and batteries on my house, and it's quite transformational, and it's a lot of fun. I will admit, it doesn't quite pay for itself yet, but I believe it will.
Yeah, but it's actually very interesting how we are somehow starting to decentralize the electric grid. So that's a very, very interesting step ahead. But if we go back to, you have been talking about corporations and also about cooperation and about enterprises. So we often talk about how talk and listen, how DAOs are going to change the way we organize society, the way we cooperate in different ways, like in enterprise level, in corporations level, but also at the smaller levels. And it's pretty clear how DAOs are really successful in the decentralized protocols, like we have seen Uniswap and this kind of DAOs work very well. But it's not so obvious how the DAO model can work in all the other use cases. So, and since I think EY has more like experience in the enterprise level and in the corporation level, so what is your take on how the DAO model can apply to enterprises? or how is it coming to revolutionize that that field?
So I think DAOs will become this mechanism for it will become a new way of forming enterprises. So existing enterprises may find some uses for DAOs, right, as a mechanism for managing their presence on chain. But many new companies may simply start as DAOs. It becomes very easy now for DAOs to start, for you to set one up. There's all these software services and management infrastructure. One thing that's missing, it's not very mature, we're still in the early stages of, is privacy, right? And privacy ultimately is going to become important because enterprises, as we head into a world of competition and users starting to do really valuable things on chain, they're going to want to know that their sensitive personal information, their sensitive business information isn't widely available. But we don't actually today have any. If you run your entire DAO business on chain, you're exposing every single thing that you do to kind of public inspection. And that's not really feasible for most larger enterprises. So I think it's too early for us to know how DAOs will be used by enterprises, mainly because without sustainable privacy infrastructure, we don't yet know how enterprises will use it. They won't even try until they have a level of privacy that they think is satisfactory.
Yeah, that's a good point that actually was mentioned at the beginning. In that sense, I would say there are like some solutions already on the let's say being tried, like roll-ups and layer 2 technology in general. But also we already had something like Tornado Cash that in the US was banned. In Europe is kind of like a controversial topic. And I know it's not easy to argue about it. There are its problems, but it's a tool that was providing privacy. So what's your take on that?
So there's a huge misunderstanding about sort of how privacy is actually usable and deployable. So services like Tornado Cash and Monero and Zcash, not Zcash, but Tornado Cash, Monero, and others, they're mixers, right? And they work really well with fungible tokens, right? So I can put some fungible tokens in this mixer and you can take them out and no one can easily make the connection between myself and yourself. There's a couple of problems with this. First of all, if you think about all business agreements, they basically boil down to this. I've got money and you've got stuff, and we're exchanging my money for your stuff under the terms of an agreement. Now, in the world of financial services or something simple like payments, there's no agreement. There's no business rules, right? There's just my money for your stuff. And by the way, in a world of ERC20s where everything is fungible, your stuff is completely undifferentiatable from other stuff. Tornado Cash, Monero, none of these services work with NFTs. Right? An NFT shows up everywhere. And then, by the way, if you want to have a business agreement, like complex logic, like, hey, if I buy 1 million of these widgets from you, you're going to give me a discount. Again, none of that stuff can work through mixers. And this is one of the first big misunderstanding people have about privacy is to think, oh, we had Tornado Cash and it didn't work. Well, Tornado Cash and some of these other mixers are not suitable for business. The use case doesn't work. And there's another problem, which is that they're anonymous. And people here are confusing anonymity with privacy, right? So the tool that we have built, Nightfall, has two things. We built two things that really kind of address this. And it's taken a long time because it's much harder. Nightfall allows you to make payments and transfers of both fungible and non-fungible tokens under privacy, but it does not allow anonymity. In order to use Nightfall, even on the public Ethereum network, you must have an enterprise SSL certificate that identifies you. So regulators will know if you are using this system. Your competition or others will not be able to see what you're doing, but they will be able to see that you are using it, right? Secondly, Starlight is actually a compiler and allows you to take a Solidity smart contract and turn it into a zero knowledge circuit. That's where you get the business logic, right? So Nightfall lets you do the money for stuff. Starlight lets you do the business terms and conditions. But again, this is a system that enables privacy, but not anonymity. And that's really important difference. Enterprises, if you think about, if you take a product that you own, like a set of headphones, 5 minutes after that product comes to market, everybody knows who's making them, and somebody has torn it apart, and they know what the parts are. So companies don't expect absolute perfect secrecy and privacy. What's much more important is they want to make sure that nobody knows how many they've ordered, where they are, what they paid for the components. And those are all things that privacy, but not anonymity, can deliver. And so that's why actually there's a huge amount of educational work to be done, because simple things like Tornado Cash and others, they provide privacy and anonymity, but only for individuals and only for people using not fully fungible tokens. Enterprise stuff is about complex business agreements using very typically non-fungible items. You know, if you open up almost any enterprise product, it's not that just there's a memory chip in there. It's a memory chip from Samsung, a DDR4 with a serial number that was made specifically for this product or something like that. It's a very, very specific item. It's non-fungible. And without privacy tools at scale, I could follow non-fungible tokens around the blockchain all day and night. There's nothing Tornado Cash or any other type of mixer could do about that.
Understood. I think all the DAO Day Estonia participants also understood. And this topic is heavily on the table of all of us. So as we are running out of time slowly, the last question maybe for you, or maybe like one more, but this one is, if you look at right now's world order that we are having, we live in internet, and at the same time we have these old borders because we have these old legal, let's say, agreements between countries. Do you think it's that distributed blockchain technology could save us from the future conflicts somehow?
I don't think so. I think, unfortunately, that conflict it's tightly wound with human personality, right? And it's tightly wound with power and human personality. And it's a little bit like the business cycle. People are just like, oh, you know, if people were rational, we wouldn't have business cycles. We wouldn't have a rational upsides. We wouldn't have a rational downsides. But ultimately, conflict and all these other things are sort of wound up in our human personality. And I think that's a little bit inescapable. I think one of the tough things is, if you're like me and a lot of other people who are in the world of blockchain, you're probably very idealistic. You're excited, like early on in the era of the internet, and you can tell I'm really old because I have all this gray hair, but early on in the internet, we had this idea like, it's going to be so amazing. It's going to contribute to so much understanding. There's going to be truth and freedom all around the world. Well, it didn't happen, right? Lies got a lot of traction. We didn't have a lot of truth and freedom. The good thing about new technology is we get a chance every time we have this new wave of technology to try to fix some of the things that we maybe didn't do ideally last time. But I think at the end of the day, we can't sort of outrun human nature. Like conflict, culture, these are things that are sort of tightly wound, and we can try to make the world a better place, but we should probably accept that human nature is not going to change that much.
Okay, so we can actually today at DAO Day Estonia rename our culture for the future, like a better culture. Yeah.
I agree. We should never stop trying. One of the things that frustrates me a lot is when people say, you know, the world is unfair and you should just deal with it. The world is unfair and we can accept that it's unfair, but we should try to make it better, right? And that's very important to me. It's why I'm in the business I'm in. I care about making the world a better place. And I don't mind if I fail. It's still important that I try.
So that's perfect for kind of a wrapping question. And so what are the DAO and Web3 projects that excite you the most, that you think are going to bring a change into the society and actually therefore like also bring mainstream adoption, which is one of the questions that we might have around DAO Day?
So I think there's probably three that excite me a lot. The first is Uniswap and some of the other big, like really successful commercial DAOs, right? I think it's just really important to see examples of success, whether it's Uniswap, Curve, Compound, whatever it is. These DAOs that are commercially successful remind people that you can build a really huge business in blockchain technology, and big business opportunities attract talent. Number two, public goods. I am a huge fan of the work that gets done by entities like Gitcoin and others that are into funding public goods, right? We can and should do a better job of scaling up the work of making the world a better place. And so I love what they are doing and the way that they are trying to do it. And at EY, for example, we have actually built a product called Public Finance Manager. And the idea is that this tool can be used by government agencies and international development organizations to bring better transparency to how they deliver their product. So funding public goods, funding public services is a second really hot topic. And then third, I love some of these like kind of culture DAOs like Nouns and others that are exciting people about just engaging with blockchain technology in a fun way and are operating successfully, right? We should be working on culture, we should be funding public goods, and we should show people you can build really big businesses. So those are the kinds of things that I am very supportive of and want to see happen more of in the world of blockchain and DAOs. Thank you so much for having me on video.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining.